Okay, welcome to Introduction to Dreamweaver for Class 12, November 7th. Today we are going to be focusing on working with code, editing, and building forms. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes at the beginning of class just looking at the tag selector to access code, and then running reports. I'm also going to touch on the reference tools. They are very useful tools to discover various things that aren't always apparent in other places. The homework that is due as of midnight tonight, and I checked, 75% of the class has already completed it. That's the assignment where you're creating a page based on a template. Make sure that you've got that uploaded by midnight tonight. Any questions before I jump into talking about forms? Okay. Good. So I'm going to open up Dreamweaver here, and I'm going to talk to you a little about the tag selector before we go on. The tag selector is at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. I've used this extensively in the past with you, showing that basically the best way to navigate within any page is to select the portion of the page that you're interested in, and then use the tag selectors to drill from right to left to look at the hierarchy. So if you look at my CSS Styles panel over in the right-hand corner, it is set to CSS Styles Current. What happens is when I click within a document and then I start using the tag selector, the styles that display here are going to change according to which tag I've got selected. So with the list item tag selected, I see that I've got the properties for the list item in the right column. If I select UL, it shows me the tags that are associated with that. Right column tags, content wrapper, outer wrapper, and finally the body tag. So using the tag selector is really an important part of my workflow when I'm working in Dreamweaver. I constantly click on the document, go through my tags at the bottom left-hand corner on the tag selector, and then look at the CSS Styles panel to identify what's going on. That is pretty much all there is to working with the tag selector. Any questions about the tag selector? Okay, all good. So, generating reports. So generating reports is a little bit different. You find it up at the Site menu, and you see in the Site menu, one of the options that you have is Site Reports. There are really 5 different types of reports that you can generate listed under HTML reports. You can generate workflow reports, such as if it's checked out by somebody, or if there are design notes that are associated with it, or when the document was recently modified. And that's fine if you're working in a collaborative environment. For what we've been doing in this class, we've been working on our own, and that being the case, we're more interested in the HTML reports. The most useful reports that I have found are the missing alt text, which is a requirement for any page to meet accessibility standards. There needs to be alt text for all of the images. Also, if you have any empty tags or redundant nested tags, those are pretty useful reports. And finally, this one I certainly think is good for those people who've managed to lose a few little points here and there over the semester for uploading untitled documents. You want to make sure that you run an untitled document report. In addition to running the report on the currently selected document, you can run the report on entire local sites, or selected files in a site, or a folder within the site. So for example, for me right now, I'm going to choose to run a report on the Dreamweaver A homework folder. And I'll choose that. And then I'm going to run an HTML report on all 5 of those elements at once. When I click on Run, it runs through all of the pages, and you see there are some elements here that have to be addressed. The way it works is that when you have a problem, it shows up within the Site Report panel, which is at the bottom of your screen. Very nice feature is if I double-click on any of these error messages, it takes me to that page. So then I can see I have this empty div tag. I can remove that and jump to the various alt tags that I'm supposed to have filled in here. So I'm going to just put in from. I'm just going to copy that and continue to how come that alt thumb. Right. All I will do is I'll just paste. Oopsie, I didn't want to paste it like that. I'm going to just copy this alt tag with its value and just paste that on the various tags that need the adjustment. And now when I run this report again, I should see most of these things gone. One of the things that I don't like about this particular feature is that when you try to rerun the report, you have to go through redefining it all again. Click on Run, and now we see I have 2 elements that need to be addressed. This untitled document, which should never be there. It's probably an assignment I'm not using anymore, which it is, but nevertheless, it's still part of my web site, so I want to make sure that that's addressed. And finally, this one, multiple title tags. Okay, this one is a bogus issue because what it's referring to is it's referring to an XML document where it's very common. You always use multiple tags. But maybe using the name title is causing a problem for the code generator here. Okay, so that's basically how you run your site report. The one thing about the site report that you should be aware of is when you run a report on an entire site, it will update all of the pages, and then you have to go through the process of saving each one of those pages in order to have those changes applied to the document. Okay, so that's the site report that I think is very useful to use when you're cleaning up your site as you go towards the end. There are some other things that I want to point out to you that are part of that same panel set that shows up at the bottom of the window, and that is, let me do it this way, that is we see that you've got also, in addition to the site reports that show up over here, you also can search through documents for different things. You can use the validation tool, and I've pointed this out before. You can validate this against various browsers. Now actually this is validating the document. The next one is the browser compatibility. You can validate this document, and we see that it looks like I have some problems with this document, and I have to double click here to find out where that problem is. It says document type does not allow the UL element here. looks like the way I've constructed this is I put an unordered list inside of an unordered list, and that's not a problem. So I'm not sure why it's telling me it's missing an LI. Let's take a look at the structure really fast. I've got an unordered list, then I've got a list item. Now if I have another unordered list, it's the child of the first unordered list. So yeah, there's no indentation there, so maybe that's what it's, I'm not sure why that would be a problem, but I will do my due diligence here and refresh it and revalidate. Aha. And oh, okay. And this one, I knew there were no validation errors here. This one is something that I'm going to be talking to you about in greater detail this afternoon, because it says autocomplete is turned to on. That happens to be an HTML5 attribute, and since I am validating this to XHTML 1.0 strict, it's coming up with an error for that. So I have two choices. One is to remove the autocomplete on, which I don't want to do because I really find it to be a nifty feature. And my other choice is to change the document type declaration, which is exactly what I'm going to do. Does anybody remember what's my process of changing the document type declaration to a page? Preferences? Well, you can change the default document type declaration in preferences, but for a page that's already not modify, for a page that's already been created, that's, yeah, go to code. Yeah, you can do that. That's a tricky answer, but let me rephrase the answer. Which menu item is going to be the one that allows me to do it within the GUI interface? Page properties, no. Is the right answer. You go File, Convert. And you can choose, and this is where everybody says, aha. We go to File, Convert, and we choose HTML5. And the document is converted to HTML5. Now I can validate the current document, and I see no errors or warning found for HTML5. Okay, and I'll just re-upload this by clicking Preview in Browser, and there's my document. We'll get to, oh, look at that nifty picture there. Hey, how come it's rotated like that? Doesn't look rotated here in Design View. What's he doing? Okay, so we see that we've got the search button, we've got the validation button, and we've got the browser compatibility button that we can check the browser compatibility, and we see that, well, there are some issues dealing with Internet Explorer 6.0. So since I don't give one hoot about Internet Explorer 6.0 anymore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my browser compatibility settings and change Internet Explorer up to 7.0. And then I'll click on OK, and I'll see that there is one z-index bug which I could address from line 40 of my document. I'd have to go to line 40 to see where this is z-index bug. Okay, oh, it happens to be an AP div that is being examined here. It says positioned containers define a new stacking order even when the computed z-index of the container is auto. This can cause positioning children of the container to appear above the other position elements on the page when they should not. In this case, I do want it to appear above the other elements, but since it is a good idea to view solutions as they relate to this particular issue. I click on that, and it takes us to the Adobe CSS Advisor page. Okay, and basically it's telling me to put a value in for my z-index. Easy enough. So I've got my AP div selected, and z-index here already has a value, but I'm going to change it to a value of 10. And now I'm going to save it. I'm going to revalidate it. And it's still telling me that there is some kind of z-index issue. I read that really quickly over here. Position containers, no standard method, explicitly setting, no standard method outside explicitly setting z-index properties on all positioned elements. Well, I did. I set it on all positioned elements. I only have one positioned element, that being that particular box. So z-index is something we did cover. It's basically the third dimension. So when you have AP divs, you can stack them on top of each other. It's a stacking order. Okay? But nevertheless, we see, and I bring this up because we were looking at site reports. And what I wanted you to see was in relation to site reports, you've got all these other panels that travel with the site reports panel, including the search panel, the validation panel, the browser compatibility panel. Two other panels that have to do with reports are the validation panel, which I already talked about, the reference panel, which I did not talk about, and I'm going to actually pull this one out for you to see. This is really, really good stuff. The reference panel gives you several ebooks within the Dreamweaver interface. For example, yesterday, two nights ago, one of my students was asking me about changing the color of the scroll bar. And I hadn't done that in years, so I couldn't really remember. But I said, well, let's go to the Dreamweaver reference tab and choose the O'Reilly CSS reference book. And when I choose that, I can see an entire list of all of the various CSS styles that I might want to deal with. And sure enough, I can change the scroll bar track color. Okay, and it shows me the various attributes and the description of those attributes as they relate to the scroll bar track color. And we can see that there is even an example. So, for example, I might take scroll bar face color light yellow. I'm just going to copy this for now, and I'm going to pop that into my form down in the bottom just for kick's sake, and because I do have a text area somewhere. Yep, there's text area. Let me just add it to there instead of doing it this way. Go up to my text area. Put a little semicolon at the end. Get rid of this now. And now, when I save this page and I test it, and I go down to my comments, and if I keep on typing, there we go. The face color is supposed to have a light yellow. So that's not showing up there. It could be that it's a browser-specific tag. But really, the point is that when you're dealing with some things that maybe you want to explore and you haven't been able to explore them, simply using the reference book to do that is a really useful thing. The books in the reference section include a lot of different programming books, PHP, XML, and as well as the CSS reference and the HTML reference books. So all of those elements are part of or connected to the site reports panel. Those all travel together. And if you want to access them, you choose Window Results. And Window Results gives you all of that information. Okay, so that has been our summary of working with reference reports and site reports. Are there any questions at this point? Okay. Okay, so now let's focus on forms. So a couple of things that we should say about forms, and basically when you're working with forms, you're dealing with getting input from users. Forms are very important because when you're creating forms, this is one surefire way to get information from your end user, right? HTML forms are commonly used for questionnaires, for reservations, order forms, data entry, things like that. And the HTML form is the section of a document that often contains text, markup, images, special elements, checkboxes, radio buttons, menus, and labels. A form is complete when a user modifies its control by entering text and selecting menu items and clicking on the Submit button. When you add form controls in Dreamweaver, you're creating the front end of the form. The user can add all the data required on the page, but this data needs to be saved and processed at a specific location when the user presses the Submit button. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to build a generic form tag, and I'm just going to show you the icons that are associated with the Forms tab of the Insert bar first. After we go through the Forms element on the Insert bar, we can go on from there. As a matter of fact, I might have a little document here that will help us with just some of the nomenclature related to forms. Let's see. Let me see which one of these I have that deals with forms. Okay, I'm just going to open this document real fast and see if I see anything related to forms. Okay, so here's some information about forms that I think should be useful for what we're discussing right now. And I'll beg your indulgence. I'm just going to copy it into another document, and we don't see any additional extraneous information here. So there we go. Okay. So forms. Let's zoom in a little bit on this and take a look at our forms. So forms contain text fields, text boxes, check boxes, radio buttons, drop-down menus, etc. There are several elements within the Forms panel that we should be aware of. There's the form element, the text field, and this portion, I'm going to zoom in even more so we can really see this. Right there, this is the section that calls out those buttons in the form. You all can see this picture and the little text beneath it reasonably well. Great. Okay. So here are the various icons that we have in that Form tab. We have the Insert Form element, Insert a Text Field. This one here is inserting an image field, I believe. So it's not something we're going to be using. Inserting a text area. inserting a checkbox, inserting a radio button, inserting a radio group, and inserting a list menu. This one here that is not labeled is for inserting a jump menu. These here, this is inserting an image. This is inserting a field, an upload field. This one is inserting a button, and I will go back to Dreamweaver to find out what the other ones are. So here's our form, and once again we've got our, let's see, inserting our form, inserting our text. This is a new feature, inserting an email element, inserting a password field, inserting a URL, inserting a telephone number, inserting a search field. This whole list right here is HTML5 specific. Okay? So we're going to be employing that in the final project to a certain extent. Then we've got our standard ones, like I already went over: the text area, the button, the submit, the reset, inserting a file, like somebody wants to, like you want to give somebody the opportunity to upload a file, inserting an image button, inserting a hidden text field. Hidden text fields are very important when it comes to processing data. Inserting a select element, a radio button group, checkbox group, a field set, and a label. So with all of that being said, I'm going to select just File, New, and I'll just do a blank page, and we'll make it HTML 2-column fixed right sidebar header and footer. And I'm going to take all of this stuff out, and I can see that's still in the H1 tag, so I'll go into split view, and we'll just call this form practice. And then I'll hit the return key. So the first thing is we always want to insert the form element, right? Now, if I forget to insert the form element, what Dreamweaver does is very useful. If I click on Insert Text, what we should see in split view, oh, it didn't do it. It used to do it, but it doesn't do it anymore. How come they took that feature away? If you're going to insert an element, well, maybe it's this text area. That's nope. Yeah, they're not doing it anymore. It used to be if you try to insert a form element. Okay, Christy. It used to be that if you wanted to insert a form element and you didn't insert it within a form, it would ask you, do you want to put a form in here, a form element? But since it's not doing that anymore, then we better make sure that we follow the procedures that we're supposed to follow, which is the first thing you always do is insert the form element. And the form element shows up in the visual display as a box, a red dashed box. So now if I was going to put elements that go with it, I could, for example, click on Insert Text, and I might give that a name, like name, and I could give it a title as well. And I could also check to see if I wanted to have it autocomplete. More likely what I would do is I would choose the form element and choose autocomplete. Okay? Again, autocomplete is only appearing here because of the fact that I'm building this file with HTML5 as my document type declaration. So I would select the form element, and for this case, I'm going to go into split view, and I'm going to choose name, and I'm going to put it before the form element. Okay? And I just don't like the way it jumped down like that. So I can go to design view now, and we see I've got that first element in here. Then I hit the enter or return key, and I might put in address, and I put in another text field, and address is normally with 2 S's. Then I could put telephone, put in another text field, and finally email, and put in an email field. And this one here, where it's telephone, I could have put in a, where is that? Telephone field. Okay, so some of these fields that we're using right here in this example in XHTML 1.0 strict, which is what your assignment is really requiring, you're not going to have to put in these specific HTML5 tags. It's just simply an input field, right? So if we look at split view, we see that, for example, this first one, name, it says input is the tag. The attribute that's associated with this tag that makes it look like this is the text attribute. Okay? So what we see here is that with the example that I've created for, yes, you can use HTML5 and validate it to HTML5 for this assignment. As long as it validates, I'm cool with that. But my point is that if you are just following the assignment as it's written, you wouldn't need to put in these specific different type of text fields. Like, for example, this one, it says it's also input, and it says it's an input field, but it's telling you that it's a specific input field as it relates to address. So we can see something like this. Email one, it's an input and the type is email. This one, input and the type is tel. Whereas these first two ones that I did, it was input and the type was just text. Okay, so the input tag is used in a variety of ways, and the appearance of the input tag is going to be different depending upon the type associated with that input. In other words, type is an attribute of the input tag, and type does change the appearance of that input tag. But let's get back to just building this generic form. We've created the form, and then we added all these text fields. But there is a problem with what I did. And the reason that there's a problem is because there are 2 requirements that you have to use, that you have to fulfill in order to get this file to meet the current standards. And one is that you need to use field sets. A field set is a way to take your text and to take your content of your form and group it into logical groupings. So for example, if you're getting details about a person, like their name, address, telephone number, and email, that would be one field set. And let's say they're ordering clothes. The next field set would be the specifics of their order. And then their payment method, that would be another field set. So that being said, what I'm going to do is, after inserting my form, the very next thing I really am going to do is insert a field set. And I'm going to give, and with a field set which groups things together, you also provide a legend name, which is essentially the title of the field set. So if I create a field set and I give it the legend name personal details, it shows up like that. And then after putting that in, now I can do things like name, and then insert the text field, and then address, and insert well, there's the telephone. I would insert another text field, and then telephone, then insert the telephone, and finally email, and then insert the email. So now I've set up my personal details. What I would do then is I would make sure that I have that entire field set. I'd probably go into split view and put my cursor after the close of that field set tag and insert another field set. And this one I'm going to call your purchases. Okay, and I'll click on that, and we see that there's another field set that's in there, and let's go to design view. Yep, your purchases. Then I hit the enter key, and let's say somebody's going to choose between different shirts. So I'm going to say shirt choice. And then we don't sell every kind of shirt in the world at this fictitious shirt store. What we do is we sell only certain shirts. So I'm going to click on this icon right here, which is the select icon, and with that element selected, I can choose to list values for that element. So I can say polo shirts, and the value would be polo. The difference between the item label and the value is that the item label is what shows up on the user screen. The value is the information that gets processed by a form. So we have polo shirts, we have button-down shirts, and we say buttons. And then we have V-neck T-shirts. Oopsie, gotta learn how to type better. Come on now. V-necks. That'll do it. And I'll say V. Actually, I would probably V-necks. And finally, crew T-shirts. And I click on crew. And I click on OK. So I've created 4 buttons, and I can choose to display those buttons to allow the user to choose multiples or individuals. Okay? And if I choose multiples, then the user can select more than one. Okay? The next thing I might do after shirt choice is color choice. Well, actually, since I'm only going to let them, they can only pick one for now. It wouldn't make sense otherwise. I'm going to say color choice, and I can, let's say, in this case, I'm going to create a radio button group. And the first one's going to be red. The next one's going to be blue. And then a third one is going to be green. And the name of this group is going to be color. And the value is going to be the same as the label. Okay. And then I'll click on OK. And I could choose to, I'll just do it like this for right now. I'll set up color choices like that. So we've created now 2 legends, and I'm going to go and create a third legend. I'm going to go to split view again. I'm going to put my cursor at the end of the close of that field set, and I'll click on field set, and this one will be payment method. I click on OK, and I go back to Design View. I hit the Enter or Return key, and I'll say, how are you paying for this purchase? And then go and choose to, most likely I would be choosing the Select button as well, but I want to see if there's one other thing that is new in here that I'm not familiar with. Button, Reset, yeah, File, Image, okay, Select. And now, when I choose the Select this time, I'm going to make sure, of course, that it's related to this form, and I can add values, and I'll say Visa, MasterCard, American Express. 3 choices is fine, and I'll click on OK, and I can say that this is required. Certainly I'm not going to have multiple here, and now when I test this, well, let's see, there's one other thing I might want to do here. Size, oh yeah, size, let's see, 4. Yeah, okay, so what I'm doing here for the Select field, you'll notice, is that by putting in a size, it shows more than one line at a time. Okay? And of course, the last thing I have to do after all of this is I have to insert 2 very important buttons. One is the this button right here, which by default just says button. In actuality, it would be our Submit button, and I make the value Submit. And unless they did something else new here that I'm not aware of, let me check real fast. Oh yeah, that's the Submit. This is just okay, we're taking that out. Instead, we're going to use this button here, right there, which is our Submit button. And it says, it already gives it the name Submit. And it allows you to set some various values down here where it says, are you going to validate this form or not? And it allows you to set the form ENC type as well. That's the encoding type. But we're going to do all of that within the form tag for our homework assignment. So I'm just going to leave that blank for now. The other button that you would insert here as well is a reset button. So if I put it used to be that if I put a reset button in or a submit button, there was a little checkbox that would allow me to check it whether it's reset or submit. That would be how it would be set up in the XHTML 1.0. The important thing, though, is that that's an attribute that we can set later. What I'm going to do right now is just insert another button, and this button I'm going to call Reset, and I'm going to make the value of that button also set to Reset. So I'm going to now go into Code View, and I'm going to look at a couple of things that are important in here that I want to make sure that I cover. Number one, in Code View, the orange tab, the form elements show up as orange. Everything has to be within a single form tag. Okay? So we see I've got my form tag, and then I've got a field set, and then I've got an end to a field set. And if I was working in Code View, I would then place a space for my next field set, and I would create a space for my final field set, and then a space at the close of my field set. So I'm seeing that there's my form ID, at the top, I've got a variety of field sets within that form, and within each field set it starts with a legend, and it has a variety of input types that are coming up in my first field set. Within my second field set, instead of using the input tag, I'm using the select tag. And then I see that I'm also using the radio buttons, which essentially use the input tag again, but type is set to radio. So the interesting thing about an input tag is that there are a lot of attributes that really make the tag very, very different in terms of its function and its appearance. It's the same input tag that shows up on as a text field that shows up as a radio button. Finally, I create my last field set, which also uses the select tag. The only difference is that oh, stop making noise. My cat's sitting there making noise. The only difference of the last one, and I didn't need that extra form selected there. The only difference between this select tag and the other select tag is that that first select tag has an attribute called size that lets us see multiple rows. Okay, so I go into Design View, I click on Preview in Chrome, and we're just going to make this a temp file because after class this is not going to be something that I'm going to be keeping. Let's just put it in here. I click on Save, and there is just your basic form. Here's one of the nice things about what I was saying, that autocomplete. If I start typing in here, if I have any autocomplete set, it automatically brings that information up and fills immediately that information into the form. So that autocomplete feature, which is specific to HTML5, is just a really nifty feature that I will go back to Code View and show you where that is residing. If I go to the very top in my form, it says ID, form, name, method, and oh, I thought I had autocomplete set in there. It was set someplace. Let me go find AUTO. Oh, I didn't have it turned on. So let's go back to here, and I choose the form tag, and yeah, now there's my autocomplete being turned on. I go to Code View, and we see it's an attribute of the form tag. Okay, so that's your basic setup of a form within HTML5. Now, because of the fact that there are some differences with XHTML 1.0, I'm going to set up another form really quickly, creating form in XHTML 1.0. I'm going to set up another form so you can see the difference between how this works. So I'm going to say File, New, and this time it's going to be XHTML, and let's just say one column fixed, centered, header and footer, XHTML 1.0 strict. Click on Create. And so XHTML 1.0 form. I'll select this text. And we can see that some of the property, well, some of these properties are still sitting there, but they're not going to validate if I put them in. It would be nice if this menu was more contextual and would not offer these options. But in any case, it does. So I'm going to choose Form, and then I'm going to add my field set, and we'll just call this personal info, I'll click on OK. I'll hit the Enter key, and I'll insert a text field, and I'll put my cursor before that, and I'll type in name, and I'll select this, and I'll also type the name over here, and the value also being set to name. Okay? And we can see if we set the value to name, it shows up also within that area. So let's see, 1 second, yeah. So we probably want to leave that value out of there, because value is the default value that shows up within the text field, and we probably don't want to have that. And then we can put address, and I'll just put in one more text field. We're not going to do this as extensively. Then we're going to go to our field set, go to split view, and then insert another field set, and we'll call this order info, and I'll click on OK, go back to design view, hit the Enter key, and I'll insert this time some checkboxes. We didn't do the checkboxes. The one thing about checkboxes that are different than radio buttons is with radio buttons you can only pick one element of a radio button. With checkboxes you can pick multiples. So if I said favorite movie genres, then I can have multiple. I can say westerns. I can say drama and comedy. EDY. There we go. And I click on OK. So it sets some elements like that. And at this point, I'm going to just insert my submit button. And this is something that I was mentioning earlier. If I click submit here, oh, they left it the same for both. Oh, that's really interesting. So they made some changes to the properties that I haven't explored before class. Busted. And basically, when you create two of these, I can just copy this and paste it. It used to be that you can click on a checkbox that made one reset and the other submit. In this case, you just type in reset and you change the value to reset. So when we have one called submit and one called reset, when we go to code view and we look at those buttons, we see they're both input type. We could probably, I wonder if that's valid. I think that is valid. So if I set this to being a reset button, both the type, the name, and the ID and the value are all set to reset. And that is going to empty the format. So if I'm going to just test this. And if I just put in some information here and some information here, if I click on reset, it empties it out. Okay, so that's what the reset button would do. So now let's first just examine what this form without any styling looks like. Even without styling, we see that the field set separates each of the content areas, each of my grouped regions into separate regions, right? I've got my personal details, my purchases, and my payment methods, and then I could either include the submit button and the reset button as part of one of those field sets, or it might be more logical to put the submit and the reset button outside of a field set because it's not really specific to any specific region. Okay, but that's how your basic structure of your form looks. If I look at it in page source, I see there is my form ID. There is my first field set with the input type of text being in there. Here's my second field sets, which has input type radio buttons, as well as the select tag using a variety of option values, including the size to make it like a box that shows more than one row at a time. And then we have our payment method field set, which also uses a select tag, but in this case it doesn't show the multiple choices of the elements that are inside of the tag. Okay? That's your basic structure when it comes to creating a form within HTML. That being said, the big question might be, how do we make it look nifty like this form here? So that's going to be the next thing that we talk about. It's 1 o'clock. We're going to take a 10-minute break. At 1:10, I'm going to go through this particular form that I put up on my website. You can see how when I click into each one of these areas, there's some nice color changes. You can also see that there's some styling that's been applied to this form that makes it look kind of nifty. Okay, so let's take our 10-minute break and restart in 10. Okay, we're back, and we're going to do two things in our second half today. One is I'm going to talk to you about how I styled my page. But before I do that, I want to go over the specifics of the homework assignment, because there are a lot of very specific details in there. I'm going to just put a little marker in here. Homework assignment specs. Okay. So the first thing that you want to be aware of when it comes to the homework assignment is that the textbook covers in lesson 12 using code hinting, working with the code editing features that I talked about at the beginning of class. And in lesson 13 it talks about building a contact form. And that's some useful information to review. I also have a link here that says examine homework 9, review the reference document on forms. And that's the document that I was reading to you from earlier. Just talks about some accessibility issues when it comes to attaching label using the tag for attribute. I will display that to you just in a minute. Hit the refresh button here. And the next thing says examine the homework 9 example page and read the additional instructions. So here's the homework 9 example, and these are the instructions related to the assignment that you want to make sure to review, because it talks about the need for using the form method, which we're going to be using, which is, let me go back to the assignment page to make sure that I identify that very quickly. And where's our method, input. Now that's the input. Where's our form? Right there. Method is post, yeah. So I'm gonna actually take this text right there, and I'm just gonna blow it up in terms of make it bold-faced. So that'll be a little easier for us. I'm gonna do that right this very second, even as we speak. I'll re-upload it. So now that it's being re-uploaded, we'll see that you're going to look at that homework 9 example and read the additional instructions on there, and then you're going to follow steps as it says here on step 4. Select File, New, Page from Template. Choose intro_Dreamweaver_template. that's the one that you created. That's the template that you created several weeks ago. You're creating this file from the template. The idea here is to start getting used to creating pages from templates, because that's how you're going to build your final project. And you're then going to select Create. You're going to save this new page as hw9.html. And in your main content editable region, you're going to create an online sandwich order form. In Design View, you're going to add the form tag, then go to Code View, and you're going to add this information into Code View. This is essentially, once you go into Design View and add the form tag, you have to make sure to use this following code inside of the form tag. So it's already going to have the form information in there, but the rest of this you're going to have to substitute out. That right there. So I'm just going to put that on my clipboard for a second, and if I go to Dreamweaver, and I'm going to actually go into my Intro to Dreamweaver settings for this particular class. I'll close some of these files here. I will say File, New, Page from Template, and that was your real basic one. I'll click on Create. I'll select that information that's in there and remove it. I'll insert my form tag, and then I go into Code View. And well, okay, let me save this first because I just want to make sure that this makes good sense in terms of the process. We're changing this to HW9. And I click on Save. And now I go into Code View, and you see right here it says Form, ID, Method, all that stuff. I'm going to take that information that I put in my clipboard that I copied from the homework page and just paste it in. And the most important part of that, and I will say this even a little louder because those people in the room right now are going to know how to do this, but there are going to be some people who miss this and they will lose points on the homework assignment. The most important part is to make sure that the form is processed. And it's the action tag that makes that form get processed. And specifically, it contacts a Perl script file. That's what the PL stands for here at the end. It contacts a Perl script file on the santarosa.edu server that's going to process this form. So this step right here, step 6, where it says add the form tag, this is essential because when the user clicks on the submit button in their form, the browser then sends that information that the user entered to the form mail web application, and the web application in turn sends an email that contains this information. Okay? In this assignment, you must provide 4 additional pieces of information to the form mail web application. You provide this additional information by inserting 4 input elements with the type attribute set to hidden in your form as described in step 7. So the rest of this says add a bunch of different field sets. You have a field set with the legend value of my info, then you have a bunch of text fields, then you have a field set with the legend value of bread, and then some radio buttons, field set with a legend value of fixins, and then some checkboxes, a field set with the legend value payment method, and then a list menu item, and then another field set with a legend value delivery method, and another list menu item. And then you hit the Enter key and add a Submit Order button and a Clear Order button. In the Property Inspector, make sure the Clear Order button action is set to Reset Form, and hit the Enter key and add a jump menu that links back to your home page. So once all of that is done, you go into Code View and you cut and paste the tags in bold. That's this information here. You cut and paste that tag in bold text below, right before the close of the form tag. So basically, there's a couple of things that I didn't show you that I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to talk to you about the jump menu, and I'm going to talk to you about the submit order and the clear order button. There's only one button now. It's just been changed to the submit button that you manually adjust. So I go into Dreamweaver, and I guess what I should do is I'll just add a couple of, I'm just going to copy the field sets that are already in my other document. So let me pull that up and then just do a little copy paste. It'll save us some time. So I'm going to go to Code View, and I'm going to go into my form and take this field set and go all the way down to this field set. I'm going to copy. So I'll go back to this, which is within my my site here, and I'm going to put my cursor inside of the form tag and paste this all in. Go back to Design View, and we see basically I've got a field set called Your Details, a field set called Your Sandwich. What did the I think the homework called it that. Let me just check because I want to be consistent here. Bread fixins. Okay, I have two here that essentially I combined into one. So sandwich, I've got, this one's bread and this one is condiments. So I essentially combined it into one that uses both radio buttons and checkboxes. So that, you can put them both into the same field set as long as it's using radio buttons and checkboxes, or you can just follow the instructions just as it is written. Then I have another field set that's called Your Payment Method, and then I have these two buttons at the bottom. And let's see how they display here. This first one, as you see, it says that it's a submit button. The second one, it says it's a reset button. Okay, and if I go up to the top here, I have my radio, I have my select, I have my image, my file. Oh, yep, there is a reset button there. Okay, so I'm going to take these two out and I'm going to add them. I want you to see me adding those two. Okay, so I'm going to choose add my submit button, and then I'm going to choose add my reset button. Two separate buttons, and by default they are both going to work just the way they're supposed to. So that's nice. This next one here is the jump menu, and the jump menu is essentially a list menu item with some JavaScript associated with it. So I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to hit the Enter or Return key, and we see in the Forms menu at the top there is an element up here. Where is it now? Right, let me put that back for a second. I don't see it. It says Name Jump Menu. Set checkbox, checkbox, radio button. Select, hidden, image, file, reset, submit, button, text area, search, tell, URL. It looks like they removed the jump menu. Well, you know what I'm going to have to do because of the fact that this was changed. I'm going to leave that jump menu off of the assignment. So I'm going to take that off of the form, and we're not going to have to worry about that. Sorry about that. That was a change that I wasn't aware of that they made in the latest version of Dreamweaver. So what the last thing that is key to making this work, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, is after you complete steps, all of the steps as part of step 6, remember in step 7 it said go into code view and cut and paste the tags in bold right before the close of your form tag. So if I take this first one and I select it and I copy it, I go into Dreamweaver and I go back to code view, and I can see I have this empty field set tag. I can get rid of that, and I'm going to hit the Control V key to paste, and notice the code in here says input, and then it says type hidden. And then it says the name recipient, and the value is going to be your username at student.santarosa.edu. Okay? If I look at this in design view, you'll see there's this little gold shield down here. That indicates a hidden field. I'm not sure if it's not showing up just because of the layout in my workspace, Corey. Let me check on that. Let me just go to Designer Workspace for a minute. And under Forms, do I see Jump Menu in here? No, I don't see Jump Menu at all. That's just something that, okay, your Dreamweaver has a Jump Menu but does not have a Submit or Reset button. I'm wondering if that, you know, here's some elements that I guess I don't have control over when I use the cloud to update to the latest version of Dreamweaver, because oh, my dog is barking, the phone is ringing, we're having some fun now. The one thing that happens is when you use the cloud is that Dreamweaver gives you the option to update to the latest version of the application, and then it pushes whatever changes that it has as part of the application. And it could very well be that I have a later version. Here's the way that you find out what version that you have, by the way. You can choose Help, About Dreamweaver, and we can see my build is build 5949. So I'm curious if other people have different versions of the build here. 5808, yeah. So there was a big change when they pushed out the latest version. So it's created this inconsistency comparing what your choices are when it comes to the form compared to mine. Okay? By the way, if you're on the Mac, you wouldn't find it under the Help menu. I believe you'd find it under the File menu. File, About Dreamweaver. Okay? So that is just one of the things that I have to bring to your attention, that with this version of Dreamweaver, it doesn't look like I've got the jump menu. And since I'm not sure whether other people have the jump menu on theirs, I'm just going to remove that as a requirement, just to be safe. Okay? Yeah, a lot of people have. 5808 is, I think, the version that you've got if you purchased it on a DVD, on a CD. So if you got it on a CD, then you didn't get the new version pushed from the cloud. So Adobe, they're good, but you have cloud and yours is 5842. Yeah, and that's another thing. Are those people who have that 5842, is that Mac side? Windows. Okay. Well, what you might want to do is you might want to go where it says Help, Updates, and click on Updates, and it'll push you the latest version, which seems to be 5942. I don't think it's related to the fact that I'm beta testing version 7. So anyway, let's not worry about that. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to remove the jump menu from the requirements. For those people who put it in, don't you worry about it. It's not going to be, I'm not going to deduct from it. But getting back to this homework assignment, those 4 pieces of code that we're going to be cutting and pasting from step 7 of the homework instructions, they're all in boldface. You cut and paste each of those, and you put them on your forms page in code view. You put it before the close of the form tag. So I go through each one, and I put it before the close of the form tag. Finally, my last one. Copy and paste. And we see I have these 4. I'm going to go back to my single screen view. And you're going to see in code view I have these 4 lines of code that all have the attribute of the input tag set to hidden. When I look in design view, they show up as gold shields. And it tells you this is a hidden input tag, and tells you the name of the tag, and it tells you the value associated with that tag. If I go into code view, let me go over these values. The first one is what happens when somebody clicks the submit button. Yes, reset is the same as clear. Yeah. What happens in Dreamweaver, what happens with this code is that when somebody clicks on the submit button, it processes the form, sends it to the Perl script, and that Perl script generates an email and sends that form information to you at student.santarosa.edu. Now, here's something that many of you maybe have not done, and I'll add it to the homework instructions. On the student.santarosa.edu page, you can apply for a student account, specifically a Bear Cub email account. When you do that, it will generate your student.santarosa.edu email account. Okay? And like I said, I'll add that to just clean this up a little bit. But most people have already created that email account. If you haven't, then that's where you do it. You go to the student server, you click on application for student account, and you click on for Bear Cub email account. Click here. As a matter of fact, I'll just send everybody to here and tell them to, click on the Bear Cub email account to generate their email if they haven't gotten themselves an email account. But getting back to the instructions there, so as soon as the form is submitted, it generates an email to your email account, and then it puts inside of the subject heading of the email, here's the information for my form, and then it requires the certain fields within that form are properly defined. And I have you do that in the instructions. I tell you that the name, the text field called name at the top here, has to be named name down over here in the properties panel, and that's a lowercase n. Address has to be named address with a lowercase e. Phone has to be named phone with a lowercase p, and email has to be named email with a lowercase e. If your form is not set up that way, when that required hidden field tries to process the form, it will send you to a page that says the form is not properly validated. So, because essentially what we're doing is we're creating a server-sided validation for this form. So what happens is that when someone clicks on the page and they try to process the form, it checks to see that there's something inside of name, address, phone, and email. But that's only if they find those text fields with those names in the form, as per my homework assignment instructions. In other words, the homework assignment instructions right here say, let's see, add text fields for name, address, phone, and email. You must use the label tag attached to your text field element names. So the label tag, let's take a look at how that works. If I go into this form and I choose name, you see in that text field it says right here, name. If I go into code view, I see the word name has the label tag placed around it. Okay? So let me add in another field here, and I'm going to do it in code view. I'm going to say insert a text field. Why didn't that not? No, that's okay. I'm sorry about that. It's let me see in design view. Okay, I'm going to check my preferences really fast just to make sure that there's something that is not problematic going on in my preferences, because this is just another change that I'm surprised about. Because when you click on add a text field, my guess is that you get a little dialog box having to do with accessibility that talks about the form. Code hinge files. I'm not seeing anything related to that. Okay, yeah, I'm not seeing that. Sorry about that. Basically, though, you'll see that as long as the input name is set as I showed you down here, if I select this text field, as long as the name of the text field that references the object is set properly here, then your form is going to process properly. So it's the name area of the field that is going to make sure that the form is processed properly. Okay? So getting back to looking at this in code view, the last of those 4 hidden fields, what this does is after the form is processed, then this hidden field redirects the form and sends it to a page called my thank you page.html that you also have to do for this assignment. And to create the thank you page, you're essentially just creating a page from template, and you're just saying thank you, we'll get back to you soon. In other words, the instructions say create an acknowledgement page called my thank you page, and this can be again just generated from selecting creating a new page from template, right? So you're going to create a new page from template and then save it as my thank you page and just put some thank you information on that thank you page. Yeah, if your text editor comes up, then it gives you the option to put in label and for in there, just as my instructions say. I probably am the only one having this problem, and I'm going to have to it needs to be in the Dreamweaver. It needs to be in the site for your. It needs to be in your root site. It needs to be where all the rest of your files are, not in your midterm folder. It's homework 9. It's going to be next to homework 8. Wherever all the rest of your homework assignments are, that's where this file should be. Same thing. Wherever your homework files are, that's where your file should be. Right? Because the instructions inside of that form say it's going to be in the same location as the rest of your files. Actually, yeah. Looks like I have to put if it's, I think everybody's is intro underscore Dreamweaver. Let me just pull that up for a second and go to the back here and student homework links and here. Yeah, intro underscore Dreamweaver, right. So that line actually does have to say intro underscore Dreamweaver. And of course I'll update the assignment instructions to include that little piece of information. Sorry about these things that are really a surprise to me. Yeah, most people's are not uppercase I and uppercase D, by the way, Victoria. Almost everybody's is lowercase, which is what it's supposed to be as per the instructions that we've been working with since the beginning of the semester. But I do need to see, I think I'm the only one who's having problems with not seeing that label tag, and that is something that I'll look at on my Mac and see if that is something that I have to be aware of for everybody else. Let me go into design view and see what's going on here. Yeah, right here, this should say intro underscore Dreamweaver underscore my thank you page dot HTML. Okay, so there I will, like I said, I will double check this and compare it to what's going on my Mac. I am also, as I already said, going to remove the need for the jump menu. So that's one less thing to have to do. Yay for that. Delivery method, jump menu. Let's take that out and change that to the word reset. Okay. Reset order. Okay. Now we've cleaned that little doodah up, and I think everything else should be good to go here. But the main thing that you want to keep in mind is that at the beginning, when you create that form, you're going to copy that information from code view directly into your form. You also want to make sure that the text fields have name, address, phone, and email as the name of those text fields. in the Properties panel. And what I'm going to do to make sure that that's crystal clear is I'm going to get a screenshot right there, down here in the bottom left-hand corner of my Properties, and I'll post that as part of the assignment, so that should make it really clear what's going on there. Okay? Now, what about what I spent all my time doing, because I was totally surprised by a couple of these changes. I didn't expect that, so instead what I spent all my time doing was using my favorite CSS3 styles to make the page look all nifty like this. Okay, and I'm going to go over just a couple of things on this page because a lot of the setup is pretty basic, no big surprises there. The things that are different about this, and I'm going to put a little marker here and just say styling your page. Optional styling to your page. And I say it's optional for my grading, but it's certainly not optional for when somebody comes to your site. You want them to have a nice experience, right? So you want to make sure that it looks good. So the styling that I've done to my assignment page for the Class 12 Homework 9 assignment includes applying some styling to my field sets, applying some styling to my image that shows up over here. Those are the two things specifically that, and assigning styling to my text input areas. So there's three. There's the field set, there's the text input area, and then there's the image. So let me go over those three. Let's take a look at the styling for those three. The first one is my field set. So I'm going to choose my field set tag. Again, we're kind of going back to the beginning of class where I'm using my tag selector to navigate. And let me make more room for my styles to be seen here. Let me get rid of this. That's not supposed to be there. Okay, so I select my field set, and I see that I've got two things that are being applied to my field set: the border radius and the box shadow. That's what's giving the field set a nice feel to it. It's best to do those things in code view. I'm going to right click here and say go to code, and in my field set certain things are pretty obvious. Obviously my margin, my padding, but border radius. Remember, there are 4 different lines of code that you have to use for border radius. One is border dash radius, and then the specifics of the border. And of course, if you wanted it to look more like tabs rather than circles, you can just set individual corners, like you might set the bottom 2 corners or the top 2 corners, and then you'd have to have 4 values in there. But your border radius includes border radius for Internet Explorer, Moz border radius for Firefox, WebKit border radius for Chrome and Safari, and O border radius for Opera. The other thing that we have there is box shadow. Box shadow has 5 different values in total. One is the X value offset. So this is saying that the box shadow is going to be 2 pixels to the right of the object, and the next value is the Y value. This means that it's going to be 2 pixels down. So this is creating a shadow that's 2 pixels to the right and 2 pixels down. And then we have the spread, and we have the, what's the last one called? The radius spread and the blur. So actually the next value is the blur. So the third value is the blur, and the fourth value is the spread. Then if you want to make it more subtle, you would increase the blur. Oopsie, I just changed the wrong one there. Let me change this here. The third value is the blur, and the fourth value is the spread. So if I change that, I do believe, and we're going to see, I do believe it's going to make it more subtle. and we'll be able to compare it because I'll have two windows that look slightly different. So here's the last one. Here's that one, and then here is this one. Oh, actually, it makes it look a little stronger. Yes, it does. So that blur and the offset actually don't make it more subtle. It actually intensifies it. So I don't particularly like it when it's super intense. My dog doesn't know that I'm teaching right now, clearly. Okay? I think he should learn some manners. Oh, I did change the values in the wrong places on all. No, I didn't. Anyway, here, if I push these blurs down to 1, then now we should have it a little bit more subtle. I'll hit refresh. And I could choose to, so it's both the blur and the offset that you're adjusting as well. Oh, I know what you can do, how to make it more subtle. I just thought of this. I'm so glad. So I'm going to go back to Dreamweaver. And notice it says RGBA 0001. This is where we're going to make it more subtle. I'm going to change that to 0.6 because 1 means that color is at full opacity. And what RGBA stands for is red, green, blue, alpha. So I'm not using a hexadecimal here to set my box shadow. I'm using an RGBA property, and the value, as we see here, is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, dot 6. The dot 6 stands for 60%. And now, sure enough, we compare that to this. Here's the one with the alpha at 100%. Here's the one with the alpha at 60%. It looks much more subtle. And if I want to start getting more, what do we call it? Let me find a color here. If I want to get more creative with the color, I could click over here, and when it comes to the color, let's see if I can do this. I don't know if I can like this. Yeah, I don't think I can bring up the dialog box here and make any changes. I think I could click here. Yes, I can click here, click on my color, and choose a different color, right? And then probably, since I don't want to go through that 4 times trying to, negotiate in there, I would simply come in here, copy it, and paste that new color. So my box shadow doesn't have to be black, right? Here, when I upload it, look at that. We have a nice little box shadow. I'm not sure I like that better, but yes, the value of alpha is between 0, which means that it's invisible, and 1. And yes, it can be anything from 0.01 all the way up to 0.1. Okay? So that's the first one that I wanted to talk about, is what I did to my field set. The second one I want to talk about is what I did to my input area. And the one thing that I like with the input area and the text area is to change a particular pseudo class known as the focus pseudo class. So I'm saying input : focus, or text area : focus, or select : focus. And basically what that's doing is it's setting the color of the area when you click inside it to be different. Okay? So it's simply an input tag, or a text area tag, or a select tag, and I'm putting colons there and essentially creating a pseudo class, just like an A-link or an A-visited or an A-hover. This is the same idea. And I'm using : focus to change the background color when we're inside of the the form, and we're trying to navigate the form. So we can see that when I click in here, the color changes inside of the form. The same thing is going to be true when I click into this select tag. It's going to change color. When I click into this select tag. And then when I click into this comments area, it is the focus of the element, and probably at this point with CSS3, since CSS3 even supports gradients, I can put a gradient in there. I'm not saying that we should, but I could probably put a gradient in there. Of course, what you see inside of these text input areas at the top is that their corners are rounded as well, but we already talked about border radius, so you know how to do that. Basically, you just have to, what I did here was I actually created a class, and I applied that class to the input tag where I needed it. Because remember, all of these are input tags. All of the checkboxes are input tags. All of the radio buttons are input tags. And if I just added the corner radius to the input tag itself, then it would do things to the radio buttons and to the checkboxes that I probably wouldn't like. So instead, I just created a class, and I made the class just have a radius. The last thing that I did is I took an image and I put it, and what's it called? I'm trying to think of the words to describe what's happening here. I placed it spanning several divs. In other words, I've got my header div, I've got my sidebar div, and I've got my main div here, right? So what I did was I made my wrapper positioned relative. And then I created an AP div, and earlier, way back towards the beginning of the semester, some people were saying, well, what's the point of an AP div? The AP div is really useful when it comes to things like if you want to get out of that kind of boxy design and you want to span content over multiple divs that are around. The way you do that is you often have to use an AP div. So my AP div is being positioned relative to the outer wrapper, and that's why it's showing up over here, spanning both of these divs. And of course, I'm not using a JPEG here. How come I wouldn't use a JPEG if it's going to span a header that's that green, and then a sidebar which is a different green? That's correct. No transparency. This way I can span two different color divs, and it works fine with both of them. But the pièce de résistance is how I set up the properties for the image inside of the AP div. I used a tag called the transform tag. Okay, so let's take a look at that. The transform tag essentially has a property called rotate. And I can put in a rotation of an image. So what I've done is I've rotated my image so when it shows up on my web page, it shows up, a little off kilter. Gets us out of the box mode again, the boxiness, right? So the idea is by using the transform tag, you can do a very nice job of taking your elements and arranging them in a way that you might do if you were working on a piece of paper at home and wanted to make things jump out a little bit, make things mix it up a little bit, as it were. So again, that particular tag is known as the transform tag, and if you simply type in CSS3 transform, you can learn all about it. But for your viewing pleasure, I'm just going to actually copy it and paste it right into the chat window here so you can see how it's structured. It's just really easy, and I've got essentially what I did was I have some comments showing you which is being used for which browser. Okay, so that's how my styling works. The homework page, I'm going to check my Macintosh, and if there's any inconsistency when it comes to the rules when it comes to the instructions as it related to the label tag there, I will address those in the homework instructions. So that homework explanation took a little longer than I wanted it to, but we did have enough time to examine my HW9 CSS. Any questions about what we've got due for next week? Essentially, you've got your forms page and your thank you page. Your thank you page really is simply a matter of going like this: File, New, Page from Template, choosing your template, and whichever template you're using, go in there and simply say, thank you for submitting your form, and then just saving that as my thank you.html. How did you do ragged edges around the image? Yeah, that was fun. I did that in Photoshop. What I did was I created a shape layer, and then I used an action. There's an action called the ragged, I think it's the ragged frame or something like that, or wild. And that's not wild frame. I think it's called ragged. It's one of the actions. But and it was tricky because a lot of those actions want to turn your image into a JPEG, and I wanted to keep the the transparency there. So I had to play around with it a little. That's why we do this stuff. It's creative, right? Yeah. Okay. So any other questions? Because we've been going for 2 hours now, and that's plenty. But I'm happy to answer any other questions if anybody has any. Great. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. Sorry I had to start a little late today. I had some business to attend to, but make sure that if there is anything that needs clarification to shoot me an email, and I'll see you guys. Do we have to use? No. Yes, you do, because what's going to happen is that web form is not going to process it outside of the domain. That's the problem. I mean, I am 95% sure about that. You can try it, Olga. You can put in a different address and see if you get any email. And if so, that's fantastic. But as far as I know, these form mail functions aren't filling in the form. Well, you aren't, but I am. When I check your homework, what I do is I make sure that it processes. Right? Oh, yeah. It only worked with my, yeah, thank you, Corey. Yeah, I think that the limitations of these web forms is that they do not go process outside of the domain, which makes sense because otherwise people can use it to spam you. Okay? Okie doke. Thanks very much, folks. I will see you all next week. Shoot me an email if you have any questions, comments, or concern. Until then, see you next week.